Welcome. This is Trouble Performing, a series of salon-style conversations discussing issues in contemporary live art practices, hosted by PULSAR, that's Tiff Robinette, and myself, Ian Deleón. This episode is brought to you by Incident Magazine. This is the second part of our first recorded episode, which was on March 13th, 2016. We were joined by David LaGaccia, Charmaine Wheatley, John Konkol, Eames Armstrong, Honey McMoney, and Ming Liu. In this portion of the episode, we talk about the work of Andrea Fraser, the differences between live performance and performance for video, documentation, Incident's recent feature on Ana Mendieta, and the commentary by her mentor Hans Brader, the very use of the term performance art, its history, the idea of the performance artist as a kind of trickster in society, the merits of incorporating video into live performances, the work of Tina Segal, the interview by Ayana Evans with Esther Neff of Panoply, an amusing anecdote from Canada with Adriana Disman, Eames Armstrong's recent MFA thesis show in DC, and the idea of the performance audience, especially here in the United States, as being trained to endure almost anything.
So we're back on.
We're back on. I have a question, right? I mean, how important is it to perform in front of in front of audience? If there's no one watching, there's no audience, is there still performance?
No. We kind of got into
that. Well, I wanted to ask about video, performance for video, and personal performance.
There's
still an audience.
I think it's a different experience, because at the level of when someone else besides the creator is viewing it, I mean, viewing a video versus viewing a live performance, there's just different things in play.
I think those are totally two different mediums.
Yeah, they are.
Like video and performance, you can't. They're
Sorry.
What did you mean by like?
I mean, like, is it possible to? But like, is performance for video even possible? Which maybe not.
Sure.
I think so, but sounds like maybe not.
No, I do think so. But it just means different things for an audience, I think.
For sure. Definitely. I mean, definitely
different ways to consider the audience when you're making the piece. Honey, what did you?
Oh, I've done one performance for video by myself with a video camera.
Beautiful piece, by the way.
And video was an integral part of the performance.
Well, I just was having a moment of feeling like I wanted to do this piece, and I was kind of new to New York and I didn't know what my outlet was other than and I felt like everyone was so fixated on video too. I mean, this gets into sort of like the medium becomes the critique on some level of making a piece around video in some ways to critique this idea of video and performance.
The medium
and yeah, I just made this piece in my studio one day with a video camera and me, like a setup that I had to do in one take, press play, do it. Took me 4 takes to actually successfully complete all my tasks, but that was my one experiment with that.
So then the thing is with the actual performance, there's, I believe, so much. For me, the best form of documentation is storytelling. And it goes back to that Duchamp thing. Like with all you need for an artwork is to have somebody to witness that it was made, right? But so when you do a performance, then you tell the story of the performance, and then you're your own audience, but you're sharing it, and then it can live on that way. Like the moment that he had with himself and his video camera, and then he has this residual tool to help tell the story of the performance. But I do not think.
What if there is no video recording?
Well, then there's still your storytelling, which I think is way, that's my...
Does anyone even have to know about it, though? Like, I mean, is it possible to make a performance that no one ever knows about?
No,
It's
because then that's...
process,
No, then that's studio.
Well,
I think that is process.
It's studio. Artwork is only
Time.
functioning, in my opinion, it's only functioning once it's being received by an audience.
You
And
need
then
one person.
Andrea Fraser does like lecture performances, but she's also done a lot of video work where she's actually literally somebody is filming her. You can see there's editing, there's cutting, there's directing, wardrobe. There's a purposeful intent of what kind of character she wants to portray in her videos, but she considers it performance in terms of performance.
That's her prerogative. I think
Yeah.
she's making a film at that point, though.
Well, theater.
It's so
different
constructed.
from theater.
Yeah, it's so constructed.
But she's having these like she did this performance inside the Guggenheim build-up.
Don't destroy my cover.
Too late.
I need
That was not the action she was doing was maybe thought about, but it was in a live space with people who were not like aware this was supposed to happen or this was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And so again, that in that case, it could be a performance. If you're watching it live, it is certainly a performance.
Does it become like more than one piece in some ways at that point?
Like the video, like the presentation.
There's the performance itself, and then there's the piece that's the result of the performance, which is a video.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the video is not the performance at that point.
But then
because the performance took place.
Then that's how they display their work. Then I think you can do a performance, but you can display it with either like a photograph or a.
Well, and there is like, I mean, if we want to talk about documentation of performance, it's like, are you making? People do this in different ways. Like sometimes, I mean, for me, like I'm happy if someone shows up and sits in the audience with a camera and just is like. Mm-hmm. And there's a document, and that's fine for me. And some people, I mean, Marina does this. Is how she like makes money or whatever. Is like having these like beautiful still photos of her in these like mythic poses. Basically.
What about White Snow? Let's bring up White Snow.
Yeah,
I think that's a really good.
Saw White Snow. Who spent like 8 hours there?
I think
John in it. That is like the show for John.
Okay, so McCarthy's big performance piece.
It was the best thing I've like maybe ever seen.
Yeah, maybe ever seen. Okay, so I'll set the stage. It was in one of the armories in New York. It was fucking huge, not like the Armory Fair, just like in one of the armories.
Park Avenue.
Park Avenue, yeah.
Yeah,
Fountain
huge.
Fair is using.
Yeah, that's right.
What we're talking about is a massive set that was built in some kind of studio space, probably in California, with Paul and his assistants. So like full forest set, full sculptural set.
Warehouse size set.
Yeah, warehouse size set. Grass, flowers, trees, tree tops, branches, leaves, all
Rooms.
stylistically McCarthy, all full on sculpture, and roamable, and it was elevated up on tables or like, built onto wood scaffolding so that you could see that it was a set or movable, etc., in pieces, and was rebuilt in the armory. It was performed where it was built, where they rebuilt McCarthy's childhood home. It was, performed and filmed where it was built, and then dissected and rebuilt in the armory with giant projection, like 4-channel projections on each side of the room, of the 16-hour-long film, and then in the small individual booths along either side, there were separate hour-long films each. So with no performer, you have the installation, the place he performed, the crazy residual performance sculpture that's left over from what he created, as well as the video showing you how this mess was made, and it's more than enough. And it was definitely the first time I've seen that presentation of performance, and you get the whole presence, and you still feel a little robbed. You know, you just missed it, right? It's like watching the news, which is an action movie that just ended.
Missed,
you know, you just missed it. Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger just showed up and blew everybody away. It was crazy. But now you have to look at me talking about it.
You should have been there.
You should have been there.
And at the same time, I couldn't have
That's what
possibly been there
Soul Story is
because
right now, isn't
it
it?
was so magical and fantastical, and yet so real that they don't bother to hide the cameraman or the sound guy, because this is documentation. And so even though you're watching a video, you're watching
So I
the
think
residue of a document.
as a performance, it was really successful. And that kind of relates back to making video work and how can that be a successful performance, quote unquote, without the performer's body being there actually doing the thing. And that was a success, I think, really
Absolutely.
successful, very riveting. I stayed there for so long that my friends all left.
Absolutely.
I just sat there.
It's one of the biggest things, it's one of my biggest heartbreaks is a performance artist. Like, it's really great that we get the space and that there's a community and a time and place to make performance work. And where the most important part of it, you know, is received, which is the actions and the small period of time it exists. And it's also cool we get to do it in a time where there's videos and stuff where you can take footage of it, but it always breaks my heart to see someone like cleaning up the floor right away and like wiping the walls down and just making it blank, because it's also coincides with, like, we still use the words props and an act, routine, when it's not. It's a piece.
Yeah.
And there's like different strokes of a painting, you know, basically. And yeah, I really don't get enough. There's not enough shows for the residue or that smell or stink of where a person just was, and which is really like a really beautiful getting to see the shadow of the performance. You know, there should be more space for that. A week where the food gets to rot or whatever, you know. And I understand it's not practical because there's bugs and stuff, but
Rats.
yeah, but I just, so what? Let the rats come. Like, write a piece that doesn't bring rats if that's a concern. But the residue should be up to you as well.
But you use a lot of food in your performance.
I'm king of the rats.
Like when you are in that fish in panoply, that smell is pretty.
The fish and the
lingering.
bleach together was like...
No, when I ironed it.
Oh, the ironing the fish.
Yeah, that was smells. It's
disgusting.
Were you living there at the time?
Yeah.
You were ironing fish?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cat-
You're like, I'm
Catfish. Trash fish.
I'm with you. I think it would be fantastic to have more, like, exhibitions of live performances that, like, performances just, like, have time and space. But like, at the same time, too, like, I mean, I think that's, like, sort of a lot of, like, the, like, how and why, like, performance, like, comes about sometimes is that, like, it's like, okay, we don't have an exhibition space, so we're doing, like, a one-night thing. Like,
The constraints of the whole venue or whatever. But, I mean, as an artist, that could be up to you. And, and you shape your performance. You know the constraints of the venue or the moment or the event.
But you start to feel like you're being like booked for parlor tricks, essentially.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
meat grinder of entertainment.
yeah.
But I mean, but it's
Not
also
that you
part
can't
of
do
the
something
awareness.
cool, but like
there's a
it's
whole
still,
bunch of art. You don't need to have, like, you know, it's a different time. You do that performance in a different time and a different place, like one that requires that. And you stipulate that.
They'll give you a
like,
month
this
for your
performance.
painting,
Right?
and you ironed
But
zero
performances
fish.
are always in between installation and de-installing.
You know, I
And
ironed
I'm even
fish,
thinking,
and I
like,
got
historically
20
of, like,
minutes.
how, like, performance came about as a thing. Like, that it's, like, just, like, came to be because of these little, like, marginal things. And now it's, like, often, like, smashed into these little marginal times.
I think about there's this nice contact sheet by Vito Acconci that he did up at my school.
Yeah.
And he was naked and he tried to turn himself anatomically into a woman. He put his dick between his legs and he was like, and I wasn't there when he did it, but looking at the contact sheet, I'm like imagining his, or he did this thing, my painting teacher, who actually he committed suicide and he shot himself, but before he died, Vito bit his leg, and Vito has all those awful teeth, and then they put India ink, so he had a tattoo of Vito's awful teeth. Your leg off and put it in a museum afterwards. I mean, that's a performance to me, and just knowing about it. And I didn't actually see the dude's leg, but I saw Vito's teeth. I can put it all together, but the moment lives, kind of thing, and it lives strong. Like we don't need my teacher's leg, and you don't need to be there, but it's kind of like what you were talking about, like not being there, but the residual helps as a tool to spin out the performance of it.
Well,
the leg's not it, Vito's not it, the teacher's not it, like that they did that fucked up thing is it. It's pretty beautiful.
It's all residue. Artwork is residue of what happens when an artist is told what to do by art, which is the origin of all of it. So, I mean, in my opinion, there's artist sees art and then has to communicate it to everyone else via this really, really crude means, which is artwork. And
I'm going to just disagree momentarily and say that it's that the other means are more crude than the art. And that's why you're using the art as the tool.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think artwork's crude. I mean, I guess I would say...
Not that you can't do it a different way.
Also, intentionality. I think it's sort of related because Vito bit your art teacher's leg, but without the intentionality of performance, is that still performance? I mean, someone can bit another person's leg.
Might just
doesn't make a performance, right?
Vito, he's a performance artist, and we know Vito Acconci is a performance artist, and it wouldn't have come up for him like that moment.
Right, but
to,
performance artists do all kinds of things that's not in the context of performance.
Oh, I think you're always in the flow. I think there's always working that mindfulness, that kind of awareness of if I do that,
what about
that's part of it.
Well, this reminds me of something actually I wanted to bring up from.
Sounds like cliche. Everything someone does is performance art.
I think that the thing about intentionality also has to do with why I brought up can you make a performance for yourself that no one knows about ever, and is it still performance? And I think if you think it is, then fuck yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you're your own audience.
Fine.
So,
but the moment can be shared when you tell it.
Yeah.
Well, but if you don't tell anyone, it doesn't mean it's not performance if you think it is.
But it's part of it's very much maybe more part of the process too. I don't know.
But I also think when you're by yourself, you just don't give a shit about this discussion. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sitting in my place being I'm doing this thing and what am I doing and who's watching and what's the level of this performance and whatever.
No,
I'm just
no.
Working.
No,
Do you know
all
what I
of
mean?
this is just in retrospect.
Right.
Of course, these things spin around, but if you sat down and did that, you'd make robot art. If you considered every.
Oh, if you were in the state of having this kind of conversation by yourself
in your head.
I mean,
as you're making something.
Not that you're not thinking about these things. I should just stop talking now.
I don't know. I think you could do that. Do you?
Well, if I tell anyone, then maybe it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It breaks down the need for three things. I think that it's the kind of job that you you clock in once and then die later.
Back up.
Even when you are sleeping, you're working. If you're
on it,
one who's making artwork, or interested in that path or then have to. So for me, my time is broken up between practicing, like that is to say, making work that is actively functioning as work, being received. Studio, making work that isn't being received by anybody, and I haven't chosen which gets to function yet. Or source material, the collection of source material that will later be abstracted into work and studio later. And there's like no part of my life that isn't one of those three.
Yeah.
Whether I like it.
Is this addressing, like, because you kind of kickball.
Do we even have a question topic?
Can I introduce something? Okay, this is something that I liked actually from David's recent feature on the Mendieta show. And it was something that Hans Brader was saying about Mendieta's work that relates to naming that I think is important. His quote is, "If you look at it, Mendieta's work, as sculpture, it has power. If you call it performance, it has no power."
Say that again?
If you look at Mendieta's work as sculpture, it has power. If you look at it and call it performance, it has no power.
Would you describe a
Why
piece
is
of
there no
Mendieta's
power?
or like a typical,
As a
how
performance.
it's typically?
I don't.
Mendieta's work is from like 1971 to 1977 when she was at University of Iowa in the intermediate program. She mainly focused on working on what she called earth body works. It's a form of, I would probably say, an offshoot of land art, where she would create sculptures with the land, or either on land or using her body herself, and she would make silhouettes, she would call them. And the purpose of these sculptures was not to the actual, I guess, performancy of it, of, she would raise her hands like this and what she would call like a goddess figure. That's not necessarily the point of the work. The point is to have this image, or to create this work that will eventually connect or go back into nature as that was her main concern. And so just to see that as performative, or see that action as just performative, I think, as I interpret that, is just, it's not seeing it as sculpture. You're not seeing it as the work is meant to be seen as. You're seeing it as just an action. It's not an action. It's supposed to be something that is, I guess...
We're seeing documentation of a lot of her work,
yeah,
and taking it as its own object. Like in your article, you make a point of saying that she's not a filmmaker, which she isn't.
And I have the vice president of Deleón, who's been working with her work for like 25 years now, and I have a quote of her saying she's not a photographer, she's not a filmmaker.
So we're seeing these things through like another filter. It's like we're like the films we see are, it's like a whole other filter.
Yeah.
So we're always very removed from what she was doing.
Because her work is ephemeral. It doesn't exist anymore. Her silhouettes don't exist anymore.
We're looking at documents of the ephemeral sculptures.
Yes. And so...
and they weren't done for an audience.
They weren't done for an audience.
Brader, who's
so then is the piece what she did, or is the piece a concept of like us taking her word for it? Like if there's no photograph and if there's no witness and she's telling us about it, she doesn't necessarily need to do them at all. And that the work isn't necessarily what she
and really
did.
that's all estate marketing at this point, because she's dead. She doesn't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, she has no say in this. This is like a state. I mean, she might care. But like, she's beyond caring. And really, like, any discussion around her work in terms of like how to sell it as sculpture or performance is like marketing.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is.
It's not yours anyway.
Sorry.
Anyhow.
But
even if you're not dead, like once you made it and you put it out there, it's no longer yours. You know that.
But we should discuss it more critically, yes.
To get
But
to
like,
John-
it started to feel like we were talking about how to sell her work in some ways.
I To address John's point,
The sense of
One combo.
well, to address John's point of, you know, she could just she has to take a picture of it because it has to know that it exists. Hans Breder was saying in our conversation that he, in the intermediate program, he stressed documentation for his students because if you have no documentation, you have nothing to show. If you want grants or want to show your work in any form, any kind. Menendez didn't show her photographs
Right.
in galleries.
Okay, but here's the implicit question for me. It's like, are a lot of the works and artists that we consider great performance artists and performances great because they are coming from a totally different media? Like, in this case, is it interesting because is it interesting that she's more of a sculptor and she's in this realm of performance, you know, versus someone who's a performer and very straightforwardly being engaged with performer? Like, are the great performances coming from people who don't even think of themselves as performers, but we've kind of like canonized them to fit that group? Right. Is the greatness in like that tension or that surprise of like doing something live when it's not expected, transforming a medium that's static into something time-based?
Well, we're talking about something that's happening in the 60s and 70s. This wasn't even in any art circle. These were still happenings. These were still, they weren't really in art circle conversations, unless they were very, very super,
Especially if you're a woman,
yeah, concentrated. And so I think they didn't have like a language to describe what they were doing.
Right.
They didn't have means to describe like, okay, what I'm doing is performative or is performance.
We barely do.
We barely do.
We barely do, and I think we're saying, okay, she's using her body in a live space, so it must be performance.
But for those of us who went to like art school specifically, we probably encountered performance art as a specific thing, and all these people that I've come to realize very much were not in agreement with having their work be referred to as performance or be in that context. But we think of them now and group them all together as this thing. So like these form for a lot of people like a building block of our performances or for our career, whatever, our trajectory as performance artists. So like what happens if we keep looking at it through that lens where maybe the only person who still kind of takes that mantle directly is Marina. She's very much, yes, performance. But maybe someone like Chris Burden, thought of himself more as a sculptor. Joseph Beuys never liked the term performance, called what he did actions. What happens when we start thinking of the naming very specifically?
Performance is pretty generic, though. I mean, even when people say performance art, I feel like people identify as performance artists that when I see or know about their work, I'm like, I wouldn't consider that performance art, but like you consider that performance art.
I think I like
all these self-identifiers. It's like,
really, me too. What kind of performance art do you make? I'm a singer. Oh, okay, cool, good.
Yeah, when you're describing to the taxi cab, like, what do you do? Performance art. Oh, but then you have to qualify it. I don't promise to entertain you. In fact, I might just make your life more miserable than it was before you met me. Like, you have to like kind of break it down from there because as soon as you say performance art, what popularly comes to mind.
Well, most people just thought performance art is people getting naked and doing a bunch of weird shit.
That would say most people.
Yeah, I never know what to say. I had to fish.
Well,
I feel like people expect like Broadway or something.
Broadway outside of the art world, but within the art world, take your clothes off and your performance art.
I mean, I looked this up today. If you look up performance art in Google, you're going to get a lot of Mendieta. You're going to get Marina Abramovich, obviously. You're going to get Kanye. Tons of Shia LaBeouf right now.
Yeah, but Google knows you. Google does different things for different people.
We can try it on Baidu.
It knows you want to see Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, but I think if we think about the mainstream performance, what gets really written about, a lot of media attention, those are the things that your average person who doesn't go to performance events is gonna grab onto, or like
if they're thinking
Andy
about it
Kaufman.
at all.
I mean, I think in the general consensus, it's like the performance artist is like a trickster, is somebody who like embodies this other avenue of life in a way.
What do you mean by that?
Like, okay, someone.
I think a performance artist should be like the anti-trickster. Like I think, like I've said before that like a magician will trick you and a performance artist will show you magic. Without any tricks. Just there's real crazy shit going on right now between all of us in this room that is so far beyond our understanding and so purdy. Let's play with that. Why you gotta trick everybody? We're all constantly being tricked all the time, and I want to fight against that in some way. I want to fight against all the deception and all against the tricks and mess with truth.
Well, by trickster, I don't mean just like illusion, but like getting one over somebody, and that could even be like a power structure. So like performance art, if you look it up in like a random search online, you're definitely going to hit these days like Voina or Pussy Riot, like tons of stuff coming out of Russia that is very in like the trickster line, where it's like they're trying to get one up on the authority figures in their society. So like that's what, when I'm talking about trickster, it's like in the popular consciousness, I feel like that's a go-to for thinking of performance. It's
the subversive.
Somebody who does a subversive act.
There's a lot of avant-garde art. They're all subversive.
Yeah, but is that what we actually see, like on the ground in a performance community?
More like tightrope walkers. What did Picasso say? With each stroke, I risk my life.
The sense of urgency, yeah. Where is that? Not so much.
But I think when you commit to an action, even just like Maria Abramovich holding a jar of milk for 2 hours, that's something radical about it. Because that once you commit that to human action and an audience commit their time to watching you for 2 hours, that seems really radical and different. I don't know about a trickster or a sleight of hand. I think it just that kind of commitment.
I think radical or whatever they're adjectives that maybe are seen from the outside, but again, if you see Marina Abramovich's milk, it's, if you're familiar with performance art or a performer yourself, it's kind of like
maybe there was a time, but not now.
Right. Although she was doing it at that time.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, in her
She's
defense,
a
I
little
have
bit
tons
later
of problems
than
with her,
60s,
but like
though.
she did do some amazing work.
She's the Rolling Stones. Just like, who's the greatest performance
She's on
artist
fucking
ever?
her Steel Wheels album
Who's
right
the
now
worst?
or something.
Marina Abramovich. She was just around too long. And what's sad to me is she's like the first one that had the chance to become a like rich tyrant. And just did.
She's a little bit later though. Like she's the performance. I really think performance kicked up with Vito Acconci and Caroline.
Oh, she did some, but Marina did do some interesting work, like early in her,
yes,
like in her, like
Yeah. I mean,
wherever the start of it all was, like,
more
but
times
Marina
than not,
herself,
Marina's
before
been
she
on it.
became like this, like
Yeah.
brand name thing, like.
Exactly. When she
Which
started
only happened
making
like 10
money.
years
like
ago.
Bobby
That's
Johnson.
when she started making money. When she became,
Yes.
when she blew up.
Well,
And
and like, who can blame her for like hitting
Wanting to
60
eat
and
some
being
food.
like, I'm sick of fucking whatever. I'm
I
doing."
can. I mean, well, you can't. I mean,
I mean,
I can't.
I've
Yeah,
said it.
I
I've
mean,
been like,
she's
show
like-
me the sellout
Yeah.
window,
She's
please.
like our
Someone
grandma
direct
that
me
let us
there.
down.
No, I know.
Sure, I'll stop making artwork for $10 million, but fucking, I won't like become a crazy tyrant and still I'll start a clothing line or something. I won't just keep calling it artwork and like making
Yeah,
people
I
work
hear
for
you.
free.
Did you see the
$8 an
Adidas
hour.
commercial?
Yes, I did.
Oh, yuck! Dude,
You did.
hate it. No, I
It was
didn't.
vomitous.
When you say like
It was
people
terrible.
become immune to that kind of idea because it's been done before,
Mhm.
but that means also you're not present. Once you're present, it can be refreshing every time you do it. It's like a meditation. It's radical.
I agree with that.
You meditate for 20 minutes or 40 minutes. Every time you meditate, you
Unless you're
focusing,
hungover, it's what you bring to it as well.
Yeah, that's when you're present. That's radical.
I think performance. I think what separates from performance is that it has very much a self-awareness of itself in the creation process, whether it's the artist or the observer or the total package. I think is the total that self-awareness that is involved.
And I was just going to say, I think, like, while we're talking about performance, and, like, it's easy to talk about, like, what performances have happened, like, in terms of, like, what is performance, like, where is it going, like, what is the trajectory, I guess, is something where I'm thinking, and, like, in terms of, oh, God, I had so many thoughts just a second ago, and they've all slipped my mind. I'm just going to round back to another thing where I feel like there's a thing about arts, and as we're, like, heading towards the end of this, like, conversation and moment, where, like, only, like, safe, sober space is true professional art. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Where, like, when it's finally, like, we're going to make it, and now we're performing at MoMA, and we're here, and everyone's, like,
it's dead.
Sober and safe, and it's
my
like,
work is validated.
this, and my work is validated. Like, that's just a fucking mess, okay? That's, like, artists should be allowed to, and we should accept that we live in, like,
the next one of these things should be
wild
entirely about
space.
the white box.
Anyway, that wasn't even the point I was trying to make, but
wild space. I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. I can't talk anymore. Wait,
there was. I don't know. Does everybody want to? We could call it.
I'm good for another 5 hours.
You know, fuck the Yankees.
But there was another point. Wait, the future.
Oh, right, the future.
So here we see, like, you know, you go to performances and you see these repetitious things, and you're like, you know, for me, it's like, the second projected video comes on, I'm done. I'm just over. Like, the second the video fucking thing comes on, I'm like, just show a fucking video then. Like, don't stand up there and get in front of it.
I've seen some good-ass projected performances.
Yeah.
I have seen, like, so, like, but I feel like this is the form that people learn.
When it works.
People are like, I feel like there's a thing where it's like, in school you learn about performance art, and that means you get up in front of projected video and do something. Mm-hmm. And it's like this thing that, like, needs to be just, like, torn down at some point. It needs to be,
use
do you know what I mean? It's like, how do we, what is forward?
Right. It always makes me think of a kid like that. I see a parent, like, pushing a kid, and he has to, like, lift his legs in the walker. You know, the kid's like 6 and he's in a walker, and the parents are strolling him around. I'm like, get out and walk, you lazy piece of shit! Like, it just makes me. That's what the projection. So much of the projected stuff. I can't say all of it. I've seen some good stuff.
Sometimes it works really, really well, and when it does, it's fucking awesome.
It's just like you can
I guess like anything,
bro. You don't need
everything can work. Everything can be brought into a performance and work. But it's just like, are you coming at it from thinking that these are the media that you need to use for a performance, or is it totally necessary to your performance?
Exactly.
It's like, what's the origin of this piece?
99% of dance I see with projection is garbage.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like,
let's not start on dance.
Yeah, wow, that's a round 2. That's a whole separate night conversation
for us.
We could have a whole separate night conversation about the white box. It's like a 4-hour conversation.
By comparison,
I want to get into talking about dance.
Projection with
but
performance
right now,
art is like
yes.
Yeah, we should get into dance. That's a.
Well, the best performances I've seen in the past 3 months have been dance pieces.
Or had dance elements.
But
or choreographed elements.
But these are very intentional things that are not like the typical thing we see in a performance art event that has dance. That's like coming from a totally different
performance dance.
Yeah. See,
I know. I'm sure.
I feel like there's.
Are we actually going on to dance?
No. Wait,
you need to prepare yourself.
No. I do.
I have to recenter.
Not dance specifically, but it seems like there's a lot of performance work that wants to delve, like put like one toe into another art form without that discipline. So it's like there's a lot of performance that's happening that is very much theater, but these people did not study theater, and they don't want to, and they want to deride theater. But theater done well is fucking awesome.
Sure.
It can be.
Absolutely.
And so when we see dance and theater in performance art spaces that totally fail, I don't think it's because dance and theater suck. I think it's just people are not in either discipline. Nothing is being taken seriously.
Buddy at the Guggenheim. Oh my Jesus.
Who's that? Tino Segal or?
Fucking what a waste of resources.
Tino Segal?
Did that ever suck the bag?
I didn't see that.
That was a beautiful
It was just, you have these little kids with these rehearsed little lines, and they're victims because they're coming up against me. And I don't give a shit about you, you little kid. They even had security. They had these robotic little questions to ask, and you were supposed to not be however or interact. Like, you put the little kid in front of me, so he's got to come up against it. Like, oh, was it ever such a bad performance?
He does not identify as a performance artist. He refuses to call what he does performance art.
Yeah.
He has no place being in that space.
I feel like it's dance.
But it's definitely not. It's just like some sort of like
social experiment,
relational.
Everyone I know that's like interacted with that has been dance world people.
It's like a thing that costs a lot of money, but it doesn't have any kind of physical whatever.
Was that? And I even got in trouble. Like, they even had security following me around because I was asking the kids hard questions, and then they'd go away, and then somebody would come over and they'd watch me. Like, but you have this kid who's put in front of me, and like, I have to interact with it. It was such a bad, lame ass. Like, I don't know. Somehow this conversation brought that one up.
I'm glad.
I remember getting this idea of theater and performance. I remember I saw a show a couple years ago at Salon where it booked experimental theater pieces alongside performance pieces, and it clashed. You could see like the performers of either discipline were not comfortable working with each other, like coming right after each other. It was really, really clashing. It was very noticeable.
Send a street artist out at night with a graffiti artist and see what happens.
Could that clash lead to something productive though, or?
Sure. I mean,
or do you feel like it was just clash that kind of made the experience null in a way, or was it challenging in a good way?
I think it was I think the performers were very self-aware that they were uncomfortable with how like the structure of the night and how things were set up, and
but it's so contrived. It seems dishonest to me. I think that's the thing about the Tino Segal thing. Was it was contrived. It didn't have in the momentness.
Yeah.
It wasn't present. It wasn't like honest.
Has anyone seen the Maria Hasabi piece at MoMA right now? I'm curious.
No.
What is that?
I'm not trying to defend it, but I think you're like even giving it too much credit by like evaluating it by those terms. Doesn't mean it was good.
No.
But,
such a flop.
The intermediate department.
Devastating.
The intermediate apartment
at the University of Iowa. It brought in people from all these disciplines, and what focused on was mainly video and performance. But people come from like writing or from theater or from like photography, and then I think when you get like two people from different disciplines, and I think it can get some sort of benefit out of it.
Yeah, that's my department.
Can you think of an example? When did that happen?
I can't give a specific example in terms of my own experience.
I think people like Vito Akanchi. Like,
I'm taking a break.
He go on break, guys.
Fucking hero right there.
I mean, Vito considers himself a poet above all else. He works in architecture, and he makes super successful performances.
That's these
there you
days
go.
he's talking like that.
Yeah,
but I would
60s.
I'd say
No, but he was always
poetry.
but I think he was always a writer.
Yeah,
And
a
he was
yeah.
coming from poetry and translating it
And
into
that
body
could be
actions.
that could be like friggin' Joni Mitchell, who says she's a painter.
Right.
She
I think
sucks
that
as a painter.
poetry
She totally,
likely
but nobody tells her that she
predates
sucks. She's-
writing or literature, and so like I really think that if you look at like poem, I think at its base in Latin is like to build something, like to make something of substance, and that I really think there's poetry at the core of all artwork. While there isn't, I don't really believe in the concept of there is an art to all forms of making. Like, there's
Like everyone
no...
is an artist.
Right. I don't buy it. I don't think that, that sushi was so good that chef is an artist. Oh my god, that chair is so amazing.
That's
He's
craft.
you can't you can't just become so good at something it becomes artwork, because art isn't better
Right.
than other things.
Because it's not about
just
reaching
different.
like a point of quality.
Right, and it's a colloquially
Mastery,
unfortunate thing that has happened because people at one point thought so highly of artwork. But now it's just resulted in misunderstanding of what artwork actually is, and it's a very necessary thing, and it's not better than anything else, or like than any other necessary thing. And where the hell was I going with this? I really did have a point.
There is no mastery.
Yeah, you
Evolution.
can't just become so good at something it makes it becomes artwork. I
Right.
buy into that.
Which is why it's so hard to define why a performance is successful or not. It's not like any one set of things really that happened or didn't happen. It's just like something that didn't.
And it's like furthermore subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Like even if like we can all in this room agree that like a particular performance
makes
was
a
like
good
really
one?
successful, it
Yeah.
just doesn't mean it was for everyone.
What makes a painting
Right.
good, and what makes a bad painting? A great a masterwork versus a good
Yeah.
painting.
And like technical skill is something
Yeah.
that's like easy to talk about,
Yeah.
and like everything else is difficult to talk about.
Well, like
Thanks
things
to
like
show.
charisma are really difficult to talk about.
Right.
I mean, whatever that means.
Yeah.
That like a person getting up in front of you, some people are more arresting than others. What does that mean?
Yeah.
That's the intangible part of it. We can talk about craft all we want. We could create this like incredibly craftful environment and installation and all this in like perfect like video feeds happening and sound being optimal. But then if a person gets up in front of you and they don't have it, then like you can come away saying like that was a great
Yeah.
thing. I saw like all of the things looked really good,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but like I don't really know what was happening there with like the person's body. Why were they even there?
Yeah.
Because I like already experienced it through all this other stuff. So that's where the intangible comes in, which is
You're
very hard to
describing
talk
the
about.
contemporary film industry, like Star Wars. You can make a $3 billion
Here we
movie or
go.
whatever it was, and know that you're going to make it back because it has 0% of what the greatest performance artists do. Make magic, unpredictable magic. And that's if you get rid of all the risk. And you just do pure market research.
As much as it hurts, there's an element of truth to what he's saying, I think, in like the formula. Like the recent Star Wars was a return to a formula that proved successful.
You
I
get
mean,
rid
I
of-
love it,
Yeah.
but it was a return to formula.
If you get rid of
Am I the only one that didn't like that Star Wars, the recent one?
It was fine. It was
I
the
love
same
it.
as the very first one.
I mean, yeah, that's why.
Exactly.
That's why I love it.
Point.
That is to say, it was average schlock.
Great artistry.
Okay.
Crap.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was better than a lot of performance art I've seen lately. Yes. Yeah, maybe.
Well, I'd rather go stare Marina in the eyes while Jay-Z raps.
I haven't seen that was years ago. I mean, like past 3 months.
It's been quiet so far.
That hurts. That hurts. What you said.
Did you do a performance in the last
There's
3
no
months?
Star Wars. There's no Star Wars that beats Because I thought I was broken is better than anything. I'd rather watch that guy for the rest of my life.
That. But in the moment, I wanted to leave immediately. I could not handle myself.
I saw the.
I feel. I have to sit there watching Star Wars.
Why didn't we?
It's like someone's
That's another good
Because
point.
we're nice. We're nice people, and we don't. Also, we wanted to get more beer.
Performance is supposed to be about an audience having a lot of agency. It's something I wanted to bring up, a quote from Esther's interview with Ayana, where she says that it's a key element of performance for the audience to feel free to come and go as they please.
Yes.
Structurally, it's built that way. It's not like in opera where people are going to look at you funny, ushers are going to stop you from leaving. You can actually do it, technically, but it does not feel in the current performance art culture that is a thing that is respectful. You are supposed to be there, standing uncomfortably, silent for 20 minutes or more, even if you're bored out of your fucking mind. And then clap.
And then you have to clap.
As of present, it totally feels that way. Like as of present, it's kind of in the area of the option to swing one way or the other, and everyone is definitely adhering to the traditional principles of live.
I was at a performance recently where it was really upsetting, and I was in a different city. I didn't know anyone. If I was in a place where I was comfortable, I would have left.
Right, that's
because
Brooklyn.
Of the performance that was happening. Yeah. This was in Montreal. I was like the person who was like brought there.
For fine arts.
But it was anyway. So the
says the Canadian.
They have a lot of money.
Adriana
Disman.
Yeah. At the end of the performance, people start clapping. She goes, "Boo!"
I'm glad for that.
What the fuck are you doing? What's this fucking macho bullshit? And just like screaming at him and calls him the fuck out in front of everyone.
Young in Canada.
It was so fucking good.
Yeah. Montreal is excellent.
This never happens.
I've been thinking about it because
this does not happen.
I mean, she didn't do it during the performance. I think because the kind of like I was like sitting here and the performance was here, and like I think that she would have left. It was this kind of like thing. It's like I would have left because the thing I was just like uncomfortable with the performance. But it was so good. She just like called him the fuck out. And
how did the rest of the people react?
Well, you obviously felt like you're
a lot of people were speaking
awesome.
French and I didn't understand, which is a whole other thing about
There were a
it.
bunch of people that were happy.
But so he was kind of like smoking a thing out of his face, and he's like, "Well, if he was something to say, say it to my face." And she's like, "I fucking am. What are you doing?" So good, but why? How come that doesn't happen more frequently? Like, I really think it's a crucial
Rotten Tomatoes.
Transgressive.
When there's an element of that, people get attacked in group.
Yeah.
For speaking
for
out.
bullying. Because
it's
you're
like
attacking not work but people because they're there.
I think
That's
it's a
the difference.
particular U.S. thing where we're not built to handle critique right now, and it's more like an injury, an art thing in the U.S.
Yeah.
Like an injury to an artwork is an injury to the person. It's like the identity and the work are so intertwined.
It's because your taxpayers paid for that piece of shit you saw or something.
Well, especially
we paid. You paid every was it in a gallery? The performance? It wasn't. Oh, okay. I wonder.
It was in like a radical space.
It also takes the focus.
We had like an art place, the Khyber Art Center, and we would have poetry nights. Oh my Jesus! These people would get up there with their poems and their hearts pouring them out. We'd actually throw tomatoes.
Oh yes!
Say such mean things. If it was bad, that person got taken out.
But I think there's a crucial difference between like quality, good, bad, and like you're doing something that's like this performance was like really kind of like fucked up, sexist, like macho bullshit, as she put it.
Yeah,
like she did the right thing.
I want to go back to Esther's quote, because when does an audience or a person looking at art never have agency? Because if you're in a film, you can walk out if you want to.
It's true. You always can. But there's situations where it's more built in than others. And I think I think she's referring to like a situation where a performance can happen while a crowd is moving in and out, like the way a video installation on loop works, whether you're there or not. It's on. You come in and experience it, you leave, that's fine with the video, it's fine with you. But so that applied to performance, but I just think that doesn't actually happen.
I think it's essential in some ways.
My thesis performances I did recently, they were hour-long performances. They were on a college campus. I had a largely non-performance like audience coming to these things, and I really purposefully was trying to make like it was like the thing moved about. Like people couldn't just like sit in one place and see the whole thing. It's like you kind of had to move with me. And there was like a bit in it where I was doing like a small action on myself, and like I got a bunch of like feedback from my like peers and teachers and whatever that they were like, we really couldn't see what you were doing, and I was like, well, why didn't you come closer? And
or like, what's wrong with that? You couldn't see what?
But they were like kind of like giving it to me as like a feedback that's like as a criticism, like.
I really like your song,
fine.
but I couldn't understand the words. It was like, but were you dancing? You know.
Yeah, no, but like that, but that's something I've been thinking about a lot, because it's like for me, it's like fine if you can't see what it is, and like why you like it was like an open space, you could have certainly come closer, like, but like but like what was it in like besides like culture, like if I did that at like Grace space, people would have been like in my face. Yeah, like there's a sort of like understanding about what you can and can't do, and like but does it have something to do with like how the thing is performed, and like does it have something to do with like my affect, like, or you know, there was some sort of like clues that I wasn't giving enough clues that like you can do whatever the fuck you want in this space, which was like what I was really trying to do.
Maybe when you like I'm interested in like the fact that performance often is in this space, in this like mental space, which I'm trying to break out of, and I've been like trying to in the last year and a half, is almost like this like idea of theater, and audience is out here, and you might like even make eye contact, but you don't interact with them so much, and it's more internal, and they're like viewing your actions in the space and reacting to those.
Yeah.
And that idea of like personally interacting, I think has like changed my practice. Like in surprising ways, obviously.
Yeah.
Because you never know what they're going to react to, or if they're going to if they're going to respond to your like immediacy of talking to them, or how that like even happens. But maybe if like you're in a situation where you need people to come closer, you just like you don't like quote unquote break character.
Yeah.
But
it's not even like I needed them to.
But they obviously wanted to. But
it's like
needed
a
permission.
thing I did wrong.
Well, they needed permission. Yeah. They needed like direct permission in that space.
Yeah.
Whereas like people that have already been given that permission, like I would say in gray space, everybody that's there pretty much knows they have permission to walk closer or walk away.
Why they thought it was a flaw in your piece?
That
they couldn't see what was happening.
Yeah, because they couldn't see what it was doing.
But could they say why that was important or not?
Because they presumed that because I was doing something in front of them, that it was a thing that they were meant to see what I was doing.
Right.
Because they're used to theater where I'm sewing now. This is me sewing something.
Yeah, and it was like, for me too, it was like, well, if you can't see what I'm doing now, like, you can, if you're curious, you can find out later. Like,
yeah, they sit there and go, I know what they're doing. So that later, other people that don't need to see the play, because they go, which is also a really American thing, plot. What happened? What happened? What happened? Well, they were sewing.
Really loudly.
Cool. I don't need to see it now. I know what happened. I experienced what you experienced.
But they were doing an embroidery, and what were they embroidering?
What did it feel like? What was the lighting like? What was it like? what was it like is so much more compared to like what happened, right?
How did you
And-
feel?
Right, but that's also why American films are like
Oh, and I love
5 stars every time.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
American
Why?
films, American films, 5 stars on plot every time. Narrative's there, but they fail
Yeah.
like time and time again on every other aspect of the film, which is
Yeah.
What's
like
happening here?
environment,
Like,
character
while we don't-
development,
while we don't
atmosphere, you know?
I wonder if this has to do with performance artists
respect
and a shifting relationship to entertainment. Like, if that has to do with the fact that an audience feels so disconnect or like disempowered almost to participate in a performance where like in situations where tomato throwing still happens, it's like where the performers are aware of this like relationship with the audience where they have to do something for an audience. And if the audience doesn't get that, they react. But what happens when that like entertainment factor is completely removed? Then is that what creates like an audience that doesn't
tomato
act?
Thing,
Right,
it's just bad poetry, and they deserve to be tomatoed. But
But nobody
I mean,
feels like they could do that here in the
No,
U.S.
but I
really.
was just talking.
No one brings tomatoes.
Yeah, you don't.
Or cabbage.
Or you just bring
Oh.
tomatoes.
No, there was shit down in the.
You're gonna eat your words.
So they went to get it. They went to
No one brings tomatoes.
Yeah.
But I think.
Look, they
So-
went to get
so
it. They
now-
went to get it from the kitchen.
I think here
Oh.
you endure all kinds of performances. Like I was just like on the subway, somebody's giving some loud ass preacher sermon on the subway car, and you're stuck. Like you know, when you get on the subway, you're signing up for all kinds of performances, all kinds. Some are
I mean, all of New York.
right,
Yeah.
and we know we keep our mouth shut. And then afterwards, we tell somebody about it or not, give it a good review or a bad review. But in the moment, we're trained
Yeah.
to like not
To just
engage
endure.
with the
Yeah.
freak.
That is the,
The
that is
crazy
the
person
U.S.
Just
might
put up
turn
with
on
it.
you.
Yes.
Well, there's
Don't make eye contact.
Don't make
They're
eye
screaming
contact.
about
And it's also
Satan.
respect
You're
too,
rolling
like,
your
I
eyes.
remember
The
Yeah.
moments that you have to
I think
intervene,
about when
those
I've
are
done
every
performances,
day
I
with
put my
this
ass
shit.
out there,
Yeah.
and then people have said some shit that's not about the ideas that I'm bringing up. It's just strict objectification.
Sure.
I mean, you can talk about a canvas that's on the wall that doesn't have like the feelings and all of
Yeah.
that, but I think that we are people that are sensitive to this not being an inanimate object to treat. So I don't know, with so little disregard. I think there, thank God there is a care. Maybe there is a care for the human who's doing it, but mixed with like New Yorkers don't speak up like you
Yeah.
shouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's so
Like-
much coming from care as like fear.
For me, some of it too is
yeah,
just like
not getting
your own.
it. You might be wrong.
Yeah,
You might
but
be
you
making
might be
a
wrong. Yeah,
spectacle
of everyone
like,
turning against
right,
you,
yeah,
which is what
yeah.
happens in the culture when you
Yeah.
speak out about something
Right.
online.
You might
you
not
can
get
get
backing.
attacked and your life destroyed in 24 hours.
What are you saying, honey?
For me, there's a practical thing, and most of the performance I see is at Panoply, and Panoply is very tiny. And it's not like you can get up and leave the performance but still be at the event. You know what I mean?
Right.
Your choice is to
Right.
be there or to
Yeah.
be gone.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
that space was, if there was another place to go, just be like, I'm hanging out and chatting with people now, I'd be like, I'm staying all night, whatever's going on. I hated the performance, so I left, and now I'm having a lovely time elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But and it's simply a practical consideration of that space is small.
that's true.
So if you want to stay at the event, you have to endure the performance. And that's
Yeah.
just the trade-off for the... that's
And it's
all I wanted to
also,
say.
you're also weighing that, like,
This is interesting.
Do
to
I
talk
believe-
about what it's like in New York with space and performance?
you're going like, do I believe that I should be able to come and go as this is a performance piece? If am I going to wholly change this performance by standing up, shuffling out of a group of maggots,
The way you go through that window.
walk through the fucking room,
Konkol just
Cast a
left.
giant shadow across the person. They're in their little thing covered in jelly, and they have to stop and go like, and like bumble through, and then onto the other side of the group go, excuse me, pardon me, no, you're fine, no.
It's just the performer up there, that guy.
Excuse me.
See, I'm small. I have none of these problems.
And then the door opens up, and you can hear the dude on the street going like, Wednesday! And I fucking and that took like 45 seconds. You got 7 minutes of your piece, and like that's so. Should I be able to leave? Yeah. But you also know, and it's like, well, I'm not trying to fuck their shit
probably
up.
also constrains like more dramatic critique of the tomato throwing variety, because it's like once those tomatoes are thrown, then we're all in this tiny space together. You know what I mean? And like the
See, the tomato throwing thing, it was a huge Church of England building.
Yeah.
It was in the turret. There were many other places.
So I got there's like plenty
that's
of space for that sort of energy to disperse into, but in a space like Panoply where it's so small, it's like once that volatility is released, it like now everyone there is involved in this thing, and it's like it's complicated that way.
It's awkward.
Just for practical reasons, the space is small.
It's a small little subway car.